If one cannot resist the temptations of consumption, it is necessary. If one simply wants to live, it is necessary. Some people have a lot of it, many don't have enough, and a few even have too much. If one has none, one must struggle to survive. It became a myth. It moved the masses. It led to war, but also to wealth. Little else has affected human history so profoundly. Since its creation, humans have desired it. People play with it, gamble with it, win and lose it. It can shake the foundations of entire countries. Its ownership determines destiny, power, and poverty. It has taken on a wide variety of forms. Given all of its qualities, the question arises, what exactly is money? Money has always stimulated people's fantasies. It became a symbol of wealth and happiness, but at the same time, for greed and avarice. To gold they tend, on gold depend all things, is the motto of the most famous miser in history. Uncle Scrooge McDuck prefers to use his fantastillions to take money baths in his treasure vault. But it can be used for so many other things.
From an economic perspective, money, in the narrowest sense of the term, is above all a mode of payment. This definition is somewhat difficult, however, because in everyday language, a great number of characteristics of money are used simultaneously. In practice, money allows for trade, especially long-distance trade, so that one does not have to bring all the goods along that are meant to be traded. Money per se is neither good nor bad. It depends on how the money is organized.
One can
say that money can usefully fulfill certain functions when it is prevented from realizing other harmful functions.
Money makes the world go around. Today we know money as printed paper, indicating the name and value of the banknote, in diverse designs, colors and forms. There are currently approximately 160 official currencies. Billions of different bills are in circulation at the moment. Despite their high digits, some banknotes are worth very little, while others are worth a great deal. Everything has its price, some say. But in saying this, we are attributing characteristics to money that it might not even have. Is money itself at fault for the madness of some financial speculations? Or does it simply seduce us to sacrifice every human measurement of greed and to use the money to make more money, as much as possible, as quickly as possible? In reality, banknotes are worth no more than the paper and the ink used to produce them. At the same time, money does not always have to be in the form of a banknote. Different forms of money appeared a long time ago. It became virtual. In the future, a fingerprint will be enough to carry out a transaction. Historically, there have also been very different forms of money.
Today, we are used to seeing money in a cash form, as banknotes and coins, but also as bank money, meaning credit cards, and transactions between bank accounts. But in the past, there have been a number of examples in which money took on a completely different form. In economies of scarcity, any goods can become money.
Europe, after the Second World War. Vast expanses of the continent are devastated. Most cities like Vienna were destroyed. There is a shortage of everything. The war-ravaged economy can no longer produce sufficient goods to supply to population. Even those who had money could hardly buy anything with it. Natural objects became valuable for trade, however. Consumer durables, wood for heating, and a special object of desire, cigarettes. Post-war, they became a sign of wealth. They became a bargaining chip for other goods. One could trade a cigarette for food or fuel. Natural objects, therefore, took on the function of money. But this form of trade had a catch. No one really knew how much a cigarette was actually worth. And then there was a further problem with bartering without money.
Also die Kernfunktion, die Basisfunktion und warum
The core function, the basic function which money was developed to address, was overcoming the double coincidence. That means that if you are the producer of a product and you are looking for a buyer of the product because you want to do business, the double coincidence must be overcome. Namely, that the person who produces a specific product finds a person who wants that specific product. And in order to pay, the buyer has to be able to offer something in return that the producer desires. This means that exactly two people must meet to trade who can give each other exactly what the other person wants.
In large markets like this one here in Mexico City, people traditionally meet to trade. They offer up their goods, buy and bargain. Without money, doing business here would be extremely difficult because people would have to barter for goods. Problems arise when those looking to trade cannot find appropriate goods to barter with. For example, if their wares are too large or perishable. Going on a shopping expedition with 20 eggs could prove to be very difficult. And what do I do if I can only get 10 chickens for the eggs and I don't need chickens? Money is simply more practical. You can carry money in your pocket and it has an exact value. Other barter items might be too bulky or perishable. For this reason, once humans began to settle and trade, they sought forms of money. At the beginning, they used valuable and easily transportable goods such as salt. Every saltstone was worth a certain amount. Cocoa beans were also used as natural money. They did have a distinct disadvantage, however. Their true value was only revealed when they were consumed, but then they were gone. Furs were easier to deal with. So were pieces of jewelry, such as this bronze bracelet. But it was very valuable, and therefore was a large unit of payment. Smaller units were also necessary for payment. Cowrie shells are far more practical. Because each individual shell is not worth very much, it's possible to buy small numbers of items. Cowrie shells in and of themselves have no utility value, as they are hollow and no longer contain flesh that could be eaten. Their value is based on pure abstraction, and whoever can collect enough cowrie shells can quickly become rich. Their exact value cannot be determined, however. Humans discovered metal at the end of the Stone Age. Metal is very stable, as is its value. Precious metals such as gold become synonymous with wealth. But working with gold requires a great deal of effort. Still today, gold must be melted in order to remove impurities before it can be processed further. Such as here, in this gold coin mint. Every drop of the liquid metal is precious. As means of payment, metals do have a clear advantage.
The benefits of metallic coins were easy to see, especially their longevity. One could save coins forever, bury them and pass them along. Money that had been used previously, such as agrarian products, of course perished very easily.
The Kunsthistorische Museum in Vienna, founded by the Habsburgers, today it guards an invaluable treasure. With approximately 700,000 items from over 3 millennia, the Kunsthistorische Museum's coin cabinet is one of the largest numismatic collections in the world. The rarest coins in the world can be found here, along with a very special treasure. The first coins made by humans. Small lumps of precious metal, decorated with figures from the Greek kingdom of Lydia, paved the way for all other coins.
Es hat von Anfang an Münzen nach verschiedenen Wertstufen.
From the very beginning, coins were produced that had different values.
Große Stücke gegeben, die also nur
There were large pieces meant only for international trade.
Bestimmt gewesen sind. Und es hat aber auch ganz kleine Münzen gegeben, mit denen die Menschen dann ganz einfach eben.
But there were also very small coins with which people bought their daily bread and other goods at the market.
Täglichen Gebrauchs eingekauft haben.
The first coins appeared about 2,500 years ago. Their size and the type of metal used determined their value. The coins were made of gold, silver, or other precious metals. For the first time, people could divide money according to its value. The representations depicted on the coins became increasingly detailed and came to determine the value of the coin. Greek traders spread the coins throughout the Mediterranean. This is how coins reached Rome, where the idea of coins survived the collapse of the Roman Empire.
Der Staat selber hat von Beginn an sozusagen für den Wert der Münzen.
From the beginning, the state guaranteed the value of the coins.
Es war so, dass die Münzen gleichsam auch Wertmünzen waren.
In antiquity, the coins were worth their value, meaning that they were worth the value of the precious metals used to create the coin.
Entsprochen.
This system remained in place until the Middle Ages. The value of the coin was equal to the value of the precious metals and hammering costs. Such was the case with this silver florin from Hall in Tyrol. Only in the 19th century did one begin to produce coins that were worth more than the value of the metal used. Our current euro coin costs far less to mint than the value of the number embossed on them. The 1 cent coin is the exception. It costs almost exactly 1 cent to produce. Today, gold coins are only produced for collectors. Almost no one goes shopping with them. Since antiquity, coins have been small works of art. The embossings became increasingly detailed. The scenes on the coins ever more complicated. Today, designers use 3D graphics to create coins with ever more detailed motifs. The surface image does not result from a drawing or colors, as with banknotes, but rather from minimal differences in thickness. An extra-large version of every design is then created by hand. This is the only way the designers can see how the light will reflect on the coin. Coins became synonymous with money. But another form of money became far more widespread. China today, a rising economic power. The millennia-old culture brought numerous inventions to Europe. One of these inventions revolutionized the world in a way almost nothing else has. China had a trade-oriented economic system. Sacks of coins are difficult to transport, however. So they developed something new. This is the oldest surviving banknote in the world. The yuan was printed in 1380. The banknote was meant to guarantee to the bearer the transmission of coins worth the value indicated on the banknote.
Beim Geldschein
With banknotes, the piece of paper is, of course, never worth as much as the number printed on it.
das, was
A
draufsteht.
€50 note and a $100 note have a material value of about 10 cents or even less, including printing costs and the paper. But as long as you believe me when I say that it's a real note, and as long as it is in use as legal tender, I can buy goods worth €50 or $100.
A simple idea that first spread throughout Sweden and then England. The Bank of England was one of the first banks to issue banknotes. As early as the 17th century, people paid with paper money in the British Empire. Paper money was no more than an agreement, which can still be found on English pound notes today. I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £5, which the head of the British Central Bank still promises on behalf of the Queen. Every banknote promised the bearer precious metals, which hold real value. This meant that the banks that issued banknotes also had to hold silver, gold, or precious metal reserves equivalent to the value of the notes. Without this, the banknotes were worth nothing. For centuries, the value of banknotes was secured with gold. Gold reserves were stored in the cellars and vaults of national banks. Some even took on mythical proportions, such as Fort Knox.
In einer Wirtschaftsstruktur, wo es
In an economic system in which there are not relevant reserves equivalent to the value of the issued banknotes, future trust in this function of money could erode more quickly than when there are secure reserves.
Central banks still keep gold reserves today, but our money has long been worth far more than the value of the precious metals sitting in the vaults. There are other ways of securing the value of money today, such as claims made against credit institutions. The European Central Bank is responsible for the euro. They make decisions about how many banknotes are in circulation at any time and how much money is printed, which in turn affects the value of the euro. Printing is part of myths surrounding banknotes. For many, places like this euro printing press may appear to be a paradise of endless money creation. Billions are moved here. But a single press does not print the euro notes, however. Many euro participating states have their own euro printing presses. In the eurozone, almost 15 billion banknotes are currently in circulation. Their total value is approximately 900 billion euros. This much money has to be managed with care. Many banknotes are withdrawn from circulation and destroyed because they are worn out and can no longer be used. Others get lost or are hoarded. One single printer could not supply the entire eurozone with fresh banknotes. The printing ingredients such as paper and ink are not worth very much, but the result is. A banknote only takes on its value when it enters circulation, however. As long as it's at the printers, it is no more than a carefully and frequently checked piece of printed paper.
Geld erfordert Vertrauen. Sobald ich eben nicht mehr
Money requires trust. As soon as I stop using commodity money, such as tea bricks, bars of salt, or pieces of gold, I begin using something that purports to be worth far more than the piece of paper on which the value is printed.
Trust also leads to abuse. Forgeries have existed since banknotes were invented. It is easier to forge a banknote, which is simply a piece of printed paper, than a coin. For this reason, security features have been included in the prints from the very beginning. The printing processes became more complicated, the motifs increasingly detailed, in constant competition with the forgers.
Money, as a physical instrument, also has disadvantages, of course. I have to save it, you can steal it from me, it causes crime, and it's difficult to transport.
When I have a lot of money, I must protect it. Banknotes in particular are very easy to steal because compared to coins, large amounts weigh very little. Transporting money is particularly dangerous because I have to leave a secure area in order to get to my destination. Bank robbers and thieves quickly recognize this fact What would the history of film be without bank robberies? In 1903, the American director Edwin Porter became responsible for one of the first feature films ever made. He called it The Great Train Robbery. The film deals with the robbery of a money transport. Porter told the dramatic story with a great deal of brutality. He also used special effects. His film is the beginning of a myth. The story of the robbery and how the sheriff followed the bandits was the first action film and Western in cinematic history. Stories of money robbers are always fascinating. They often steal for noble reasons, using ingenious methods. In 1962, the Great Train Robbery became reality when Ronald Biggs and 14 cronies held up the Royal Mail train on its way from Glasgow to London and got away with £2.6 million. Early morning at a central bank. Armored cash transportation vehicles pull up every few minutes. Some of them are simply camouflaged as transportation vehicles, some are clearly security vehicles. They bring money from the banks and load up with fresh money, which they in turn bring back to the money institutions. At this hour, there is quite a bit of traffic, as the counters are about to open and they must be supplied with sufficient cash. The cash is simply filled into cloth bags. Nothing would suggest that millions are being transported. Dealing with so much money means not much more to the employees than if they were dealing with fruit and vegetables. Some believe that it is only possible to work here if one ignores the value. Damaged banknotes and coins are withdrawn from circulation and destroyed. But it is not that easy to devalue coins. Every single one is mechanically deformed before it lands in the oven to be melted. Banknotes that can still be used are sorted and prepared to be transported back out, cleanly wrapped in plastic. Destroyed banknotes are replaced by ones that were newly printed and are thus entered into circulation. Overall, it's very difficult to deal with cash. It gets worn out, can be stolen and forged. An entire security armada is necessary to provide people with cash every day. Is there no simpler way of transporting money from one place to the next? The answer to this question was found in the Middle East. Since the Middle Ages, Arabs have been traders. It was critical for them to be able to quickly and securely ensure the movement of large amounts of money. Money carried on one's person could easily get lost or be stolen. So, they developed safe ways of transporting money. They developed the Havala, which essentially means trust. If someone wants to transport money from point A to point B, he goes to a Havala member he trusts. The Havala member accepts the money and gives him a certificate stating the exact amount. The traveller then takes the certificate to another Havala member at his destination and collects the money. The Havala members settle the difference in payment that one owes the other in private. This is how bank money developed from real money.
The history of money is really the history of the dematerialization of money. And today we know that the majority of money we use only consists of numbers that move from one account to another. 90% of the money in circulation today only exists in the form of line items. We gain access to the money by using, for example, our credit cards. It is transferred from my account to the account of the restaurant or store in which I just bought something. It becomes real when I go to an ATM machine and I change the bank money into paper money.
We could no longer imagine our lives without bank money. Almost no one hoards cash under his or her pillow. You bring it to a bank and deposit the money. It becomes a simple line item in an account. What the Arabs did with the Havala revolutionized our society. Today, nearly all monetary transactions are based on bank transfers. And just like the Arabs gave their form of money transfer the name trust, today we must also trust that we can get our money anytime. Only a line item entry remains from the real money that was deposited. All of this presumes the existence of institutions to which I bring my money, the banks. Florence and Tuscany. In the 14th century, a center of international power, supported by international trade, developed here. Exotic wares from Arab countries were imported and sold in Europe for astronomically high profits. This is how the salespeople heard of the Havala system and developed it further. They invented promissory notes and bills of exchange, which formed the origin of banks. Today, many terms used in bank transactions come from the Italian giro, conto, saldo, obbligo. Leonardo Fibonacci is seen as the founder of the banking system. He was a genius mathematician. In his main piece of work, the Liber Abaci, he describes the 9 digits of the Indians that we still use today. Until that point in time, Roman numerals had been used in Europe, although it was quite cumbersome and excluded zeros and decimal points. The first bank transactions were conducted outside in Italy. Business people sat on benches, the banchi, which gave the institution its name. Cosimo de' Medici perfected this new business. He was an art lover without scruples. His bank was the biggest in Florence and provided him with wealth and power. Cosimo de' Medici founded a banking dynasty. His family and their money dominated the destinies of entire generations in Florence. Today, the name Medici is synonymous with this cultural jewel of a city. The Medici liked to publicly show their wealth. The best artists of the time were summoned to depict the brilliance of the family. Cosimo de' Medici founded a new economic sector, the financial industry. Geneva has one of the highest banking densities in Europe. One investment bank is located next to the other. The industry Cosimo de' Medici and his Florentine colleagues founded dominates the world economy today. Heavily criticized because of the financial crisis, the banks do actually fulfill a central purpose of the modern economy. Without them, there would be no financial transactions, accounts, or transfers.
The old school banker risked his own wealth to finance a salesman's ship and travel. In the case of savings banks or the modern banking system, really customer business, they use the sum from small savers who deposit their money in the bank, or from small or mid-sized companies that put aside the money they do not need to carry out their immediate business. And then the money works, as one says. By working, we mean that the bank is in a position to loan it to others who need it for a project.
The classical function of a bank is to increase the capital a saver brings to the bank by giving out loans or other forms of investment. The saver in turn receives interest, and the economy receives the loans that are necessary for investment. Banks speculated on very risky investments, however, which led to dramatic consequences during the financial crisis. Additionally, loans were given out that did not have equivalent capital collateral.
Zu unserer schulbuchmäßigen Vorstellung von einer Bank.
With regard to our textbook understanding of a bank in which money is first deposited as savings and which the bank then hands out on the other side in the form of credit, it is possible for a bank to function in this way and to hand out loans, but it can also, of course, work the other way around, meaning that the bank has no initial savings deposits, but simply hands out credit and then notes down the credit, which the bank has on the active side. That is the demands of the bank on the loan recipient. On the other side of the balance sheet, as a deposit, meaning as an account balance. In this way, both sides are balanced, but the amount of money has increased.
Making more money from money became a fundamental principle of the financial industry. In the large financial centres like here in London, thousands of billions of euros are speculated every day. Here, money is only a yardstick with which to measure wealth, a unit that must be multiplied, removed from the real economy. The big investment banks do not need a printing press to increase their money. Their money presses are their computer screens. The buying and selling of shares and other financial products happens within a fraction of a second. The values change nominally, exchange rates rise and fall. But no one actually knows how much money we will be gambling with when the next bubble is created. Big financial investors juggle with such large amounts of money that they can shake the foundations of entire economies. Is money the source of greed?
Greed is only the negative connotation of the concept of being profit-driven, which in turn has positive connotations, or is at least perceived that way. Take this example. The energy that is hidden in the profit motive is central and is, if you will, the core energy of capitalism, wherever this flow of energy is directed.
In the past decades, this flow of energy has been directed away from the real economy towards the financial economy. Financial products were developed that have nothing in common with real products. They are fictive, virtual, just like the growth of money in stock markets. This is how the original purpose of money was lost.
The determining factor is what the conditions are, whether one uses money as a means to finance exchange in the real economy or self-referentially, to make more money from money.
Money and wealth, two terms that mean the same thing. Money without goods means nothing. Having millions means nothing if no wares are produced that we could buy. But there is still no dearth of luxury items. We need not worry about the rich of this world. They have enough possibilities to spend their money, such as here at the luxury fair. Over the past decades, the number of people who can afford such pomp has grown. At the same time, the gap between rich and poor has increased as well. What role does money play in all of this?
When
we say that someone has money today, it doesn't necessarily mean that he has cash in his wallet or a credit card, but one might mean that he has a lot of income or a great deal of wealth. In turn, one clearly recognizes that money is not conceivable without a real economy or goods, because wealth, in the true meaning of the word, only makes sense when I can actually buy something with the money. In an extreme case, I might have a large amount of money in the economy, but nothing is being produced. Then all the money doesn't help you at all, because I can't do anything with it. The danger does exist, however, that everything valuable in a money-based economy will be translated into its monetary value because of the enormous power of money. This gives money its unbelievable power.
Warren Buffett has money and power. He's known as one of the richest people in the world. He earned his fortune of over $40 billion as an investor. In 2006, he announced that he was giving 85% of his wealth to 5 foundations. The majority went to the charitable foundation started by the world's second richest person, Bill Gates. If Buffett and Gates were to withdraw their approximate $100 billion at the same time, they would need a truck convoy in order to transport the money. No bank in the world has that much money in its vaults. The printers would also struggle with printing that many banknotes.
Let's go. Right down here. Great.
Buffett and Gates' fortune are not in cash, however, because they invested their money. They consist partly of stakes in companies, but not of gold coins and banknotes, like the ones Uncle Scrooge hoarded in his vault. It would be quite dangerous if everyone suddenly wanted to convert their fortunes to cash.
I can quickly access the money in my current account to do my shopping. Imagine if everyone in the country theoretically suddenly plundered their accounts and bought something. This could easily lead to inflation because a large buying force would suddenly enter the market.
There is always inflation. On average, goods become a few percentage points more expensive every year, which is a normal process. But inflation can also be artificially generated. If there is too much money or there are not enough goods on the market, the increase in demand inflates the prices. As a result of the increase in price, money loses its value. Catastrophes and war can also drastically devalue money, as we've seen before. Europe, after the First World War, large states, such as the Habsburg Empire, were crumbling. As a result of the costs and damages of the war, the economy collapsed. Unemployment rates increased. State social services practically did not exist. As almost no one was earning money and paying taxes, the states had no source of income. They could pay neither their debts nor their employees. They switched on the printing presses. But the freshly printed money was worth less and less, because it was covered neither by gold reserves nor the production of goods. The numbers on the banknotes grew, first to 5,000 crowns, then up to 500,000 crowns. Despite the high numbers, the banknotes were worth very little. One needed entire stacks of bills in order to make even small purchases. It was only the currency reform of 1924 that turned 10,000 crowns into 1 shilling, the currency that Austria used until it adopted the euro. An even more drastic inflation hit Germany in 1922 and 23. The hyperinflation was one of the greatest fiscal devaluations in history. In 1923, the exchange rate was $1 to every 4.2 trillion marks. Banknotes with absurd numbers, such as 100 trillion marks, were spent until a currency reform repaired the inflation. Have we learned from the crisis of the past and today?
Economic history shows that there has always been a form of dialectic between crisis and learning. This means that at the beginning a learning blockage appears among the elites because they do not want to accept that they are partially responsible for the destiny of millions of people.
India has also gone through numerous crises. Today, the economy in the former third world country is booming. Their economic growth is greater than Europe's. Statistically, people in India have access to more money than ever before. But this prosperity still has not reached the majority of the population. In this booming economy, 1.7 million children die of malnourishment every year. Can more money solve these problems, or does money itself cause inequality, dependence, and social differences between the rich minority and poor majority? Or is it just a way of organizing trade that is free of positive or negative characteristics?
In a cooperatively organized society that produces excess, the gap between rich and poor grows, because possession, which is also clearly defined, plays a much larger role. Whether I can build myself a house made of stone or not, if I have enough labor, if enough grows on my field, and I can at least feed, if not pay, workers with the crops. That means that this difference between people who have more and people who have less also develops in an organized society. And in this sense, money plays a role here, because money only exists in organized societies. Money only measures the difference. It can't cause it.
Having no money means poverty and debt. Even in Europe, many people live in poverty and are excluded from participating in consumer society. Whoever has a lot of debt or slides into bankruptcy also faces losing their bank account, which is equivalent to being rejected from society. Without a bank account, it is nearly impossible to gain financial ground again.
Every employer has become accustomed to the fact that they no longer pay their workers in cash. The pay envelope simply no longer exists. For this reason, someone who works must have access to a bank account.
Alexander Malley knows firsthand what it's like to have no money, but a great deal of debt. He and his team advise people who have mountains of debt, and their numbers are growing by the day. Only a few make it out.
People who are indebted beyond hope come to us. For example, their income is between 1,000 and 1,200 netto per month, but their mountain of debt is between 30,000 and 60,000 euros. We work out a plan to reduce this debt, and if a barrier on this path to reduction is the lack of a bank account, then we make a recommendation on their behalf to the Zweite Sparkasse.
Non-profit banks like the Second Sparkasse are meant to guide people back to normal life. The employees volunteer their time. Generating profit is not the goal. They offer bank accounts and help with all financial matters. The customers come from different aspects of society.
The Erste Foundation founded the Zweite Sparkasse, so that we can help the people who, for whatever reason, whether it is debt or other personal problems, fell out of the financial system, the banking system in Austria. We want to give them a new start and help them to deal with financial matters on their own again.
Man könnte sich natürlich diese ganzen Geschichten
Of course, it would be possible to do away with all the volunteer work, etc., if banks had to make an account available to everyone.
But the right to a bank account, which exists in some European countries, does not replace a fundamental task institutions like the Second Bank carry out. Their customers also learn how to deal with money correctly again. Much of this occurs during personal consultations, even if customer retention is viewed somewhat differently here.
We're actually happy when we lose customers, or we don't really lose them, we send them to other banks. These are all success stories of people that have a normal banking relationship again.
Or is it possible to live without accounts, banks and money? At Vienna's Naschmarkt, unsold but unblemished produce is not thrown away at the end of the day, but rather is delivered to social services. What would happen if one were to voluntarily decide to only live from the leftovers of our consumer society? You would be dependent on things that others no longer need. And if you produce something yourself and then offer it to trade, this is just another form of money. Periodically, people launch small initiatives to try to live without money, without this official form of payment. The money vouchers that were used in the Tyrolean village of Wörgl in the 1930s gained international attention. But can another system truly replace money?
Ein System ohne Geld ist schwer vorstellbar. Vor allem ein System, wie wir es heute
A system without money is hard to imagine, especially a system like one we are used to and have today, meaning a system based on the market economy, with a division of labor and, in extreme cases, global trade. This means that the production of wares takes place all over the world, as does the consumption of goods, whether this is cherries from South Africa or textiles from China. This is really only possible in a money-based economy.
Approximately 6,000 billion euros in trade is conducted between the EU and the rest of the world every year. Without an exact definition of money, this level of trade is not imaginable. The global interconnectedness of economies has also resulted in another trend that will determine the money of the future.
The dematerialization of money has also simultaneously led to the dematerialization of our economic output.
The idea of the dematerialization of money was born in a science fiction novel. In 1888, the American author Edward Bellamy describes a hero that awakens in the year 2000 after a long sleep in his book, Looking Backward. In the far-off future, at that time, money no longer exists, but rather only cards, from which the required amount is deducted when shopping. In this way, Bellamy came up with the idea for credit cards in 1888. After the Second World War, his vision slowly became reality. The credit card came to Europe with the American way of life. It was first introduced in the US for preferred customers to use to pay in luxury hotels. In 1924, Western Union produced the first credit card intended for general use. In Europe, they were initially for American citizens and well-off customers, but quickly spread. The card was practical, fast, and secure. The money was only deducted from the account sometime later. But you didn't see this during the shopping trip. One no longer held money in one's hand, making it easier to spend. Did Edward Bellamy's idea render cash unnecessary?
One can say that half of all cash has been made redundant in daily life because cards and other modes of payment are being used.
The trend towards the virtualization of money continues. This has advantages and disadvantages. Paying in cash makes you anonymous. Payments made via card can easily be traced, however. The customer becomes glass and must trust the seriousness and security assurances of the seller. Shopping online with cash is not conceivable. But it will still take a while until we need our pointer finger to pay in a store, rather than our wallets. Paying via cell phone is already reality. The same goes for terminals, which can book amounts without entering a PIN or being touched. How long will cash still exist?
I could imagine that cash will see less and less use. I won't live long enough to experience a society that is fully cashless.
So, it will still be a while before the last banknote is shredded and offered up for sale in a gift shop for a few euros. Whether banknotes or coins, money in the bank or credit on a card, money will always exist in some form or another.